Good evening. Welcome to the Press Box. I'm your host, Jeff Richardson. I'm here with our regular analyst, Ty Reynolds, and our guest analyst tonight is Jeff Tobin. We're coming to your studios live from Atlanta tonight. We got 30 minutes to talk about sports. I think we'll start with the Braves, guys, so let's get busy.
Well, I tell you what, Cincinnati has been making a big role, and all the time you're always hearing about these constant stories, these big choke cases year after year, going back to the 64 Phillies. This team has too much pitching. I think the Braves are going to be able to hold on and win this thing, and I think win it pretty easily, unless there's just a total collapse or they have more injuries with their pitchers. But this is a good ball club, and they should be able to hold off Cincinnati.
Well, you know, the thing about the Braves the hardest thing for the Braves right now is they had that 10.5 game lead, they cruise out of Cincinnati, and they immediately, they go to Cincinnati, lose 2 out of 3, had a 10.5 game lead, left with a 9.5 game lead, and they've lost 4 games since on the West Coast. Now, teams that are playing on the West Coast aren't nearly the caliber of the Braves. However, going on the road, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the team. The good thing is they play in San Diego this weekend, then they get to come home for the final week, and they're playing the Western teams that they should be able to beat.
I'd like to interrupt and tell our viewers, go ahead and give us a call if you have a question or comment. The number is 873-6713. Let's get back to the Braves. It looks like we're going to play the Pirates again in the playoffs. How do those two teams stack up compared to last year?
I think they're similar matchups altogether. The only big difference, of course, is Bonilla. But outside of that, I really just don't see that much of a difference. Pittsburgh still has their strong pitching, of course, led by Drabek, and Zane Smith is coming back.
They got a big pickup from Danny Jackson this year, a nice trade for him.
Right, that they made with the Cubs. But Pittsburgh is going to have enough pitching to be able to get themselves through. They did have a few injuries this year. I think their main problem, or the main thing that they want to do, is to be consistent and get production from their big hitters. I remember last year, Barry Bonds could not knock in a run with men in scoring position, especially with 2 outs. And I don't know if the Braves would be that lucky this year, but we may be overlooking Montreal still. There's still that slight chance. I still think it's going to be Pittsburgh. If Montreal gets in this thing, the Braves had a lot of trouble with them, and I really don't want to see them coming into Atlanta.
I think the Braves would much rather play the Pirates. Jeff, what do you think about the Braves this year compared to last? We've been struggling here lately.
Well, I think the thing is you've had the main, your main 3 pitchers, of course, being Smoltz, Glavine, and Avery. You have Glavine, who's really had some rough times down. I mean, since the All-Star break, everybody remembers the All-Star game when he really got racked up. Well, he gave up a lot of singles and stuff like that, but there weren't no long balls or nothing. But since then, I mean, he's had this rib cage injury, and he went out yesterday, only pitched 5 innings, lost 4-0 to San Francisco, and that was tough for him. Smoltz has been either on or off. Avery is the type of pitcher who's pitched late into the game, and then he, it's like the Brave announcers have been saying all season, he gets 2 strikes on a batter, and then he doesn't know what to do. He gives him a pitch to hit, and you can't do that. As far as looking at the Pirates and the Braves are concerned, I think the main thing, Ty pretty much touched on everything. Pirates are basically a 2-person lineup. You take Van Slyke and Bonds out of there, and you don't have much left. You have a lot of players you have a Jeff King who can get you a clutch hit, a Don Slott who's had a good clutch hitting ball player, but not really to the capabilities of a top-notch ball player. And really, I mean, the Braves, you've got guys who've just been contributing all throughout the lineup. You've got Justice and Gant, who are both coming on strong.
Starting to come on, exactly.
Thank the Lord they're coming on strong now. And because with the pitching problems, we've really needed the offense to pick it up a notch. Losing Greg Olson is really, we don't know how bad that's going to affect the Brave pitchers. Damon Berryhill's a capable offensive performer as far as catching and throwing out base runners. I don't know. But at the same time, offensively, the Braves are set. The pitching is going to be the question. It's going to come down to our pitching against theirs, and whoever pitches better, obviously, is going to win the playoffs.
Let me ask you guys this. There's some speculation that Tom Glavine's shoulder may be bothering him more than he's letting on. Anybody got an opinion on that?
Well, that just remains to be seen. I want to see him get a couple of more starts in. When you've gone a couple of weeks without pitching, you lose a little bit of rhythm. And Tom Glavine is a pitcher that really likes to get into a rhythm. He changes speeds. He has a variety of off-speed pitches, and that's what he really thrives on, is a rhythm. So I'd like to see him get a couple more starts, and unfortunately, we don't have that much time
I think
left.
he's only going to get one more start before the playoffs.
Right. So the verdict's not out on that yet, I don't think. I wouldn't be surprised to see Glavine come back and get his rhythm down and be the pitcher that we saw in the middle of the year.
Right. Unfortunately, I think Roger Craig made some comments in the paper yesterday that Glavine doesn't look like the same pitcher. Hope he's not right.
Well, that's a scary thing for Roger Craig to say that, because Roger Craig's a guy who knows a thing or two about pitching. He was a pitching coach for a long time before he was manager of the Giants. Plus, he taught the split-finger fastball to half the players in the league who use it now.
Right.
So.
I'd like to encourage our viewers once again, give us a call at 873-6713. Let me bring up a topic that I'm especially interested in. This is the Dodgers, compared this year to last year. They were right on our heels last year. This year they're about 30 games back. They looked like they tried to buy a pennant and it didn't work.
Well, you go back to an old joke that came out a couple years ago. What do Magic Johnson, obviously this was a few years ago, what do Magic Johnson and Eric Davis have in common? They both play 82 games a season. Eric Davis and Darryl Strawberry, between the two of them, played a whole year. But, Eric Davis, once again, was unable to play an entire season. That really hurt the Dodgers.
All right, I think we got a phone call. Let's go to the phones right quick.
Yeah, this is Greg from Clarkson. I was just wondering if the Braves get past the playoffs, do you think they'll get in the World Series? How you think they'll do?
Ty, you want to take a shot?
Well, I think they have an excellent chance of winning. First of all, if they do go into the World Series, let's take a look at the teams that they would be playing. My favorite is Oakland. Oakland's just got they have just shown a lot of character this year. I don't know how they're in. You look at the statistics and you look at the numbers of the injuries that this team has had. You look at their starting ERA, and here they are, and I guess you can just practically blame it on home runs and Dennis Eckersley.
Well,
that's the only two reasons I can think of.
Maybe credit the Eck for that. They made a big trade recently, too, where they unloaded Canseco for Sierra.
I think that was really a money issue. There was, I think, 3 years left on Canseco's contract, while the players that Texas traded, they were in the last years of their contract, and I don't think Texas was going to be able to re-sign them. So, again, it looks like money was the number one issue here.
Well, I think that was also a good trade for Texas, for the A's to get some pitching depth. They got Bobby Witt, and they got Russell, who can help them in the bullpen and be a setup man for Eckersley. And this is a typical trade by Oakland. A couple years ago, they acquired Willie McGee and Harold Baines late in the season for the late pennant rush.
They just rented a couple of players for him.
Basically, that's exactly it, just to get into the playoffs and the World Series. And, you're talking about a couple of ball players that have really helped that team. So. And Dennis Eckersley, in my opinion, is the reason why Oakland is there. Again, I mean, he's blown, as far as I know, one save opportunity, has one loss. I mean, the guy's phenomenal.
I think he's the odds-on favorite for the Cy Young in the American League.
Well, there you go. Do you give the Cy Young to a relief pitcher? I mean, it's happened before, but, I mean, again, Cy Young was a starting pitcher if you want to go back historically. So
who was the last one to win it? Was Willie Hernandez maybe?
Well, you've
last
had
reliever?
Willie Hernandez. You've had Mike Marshall won it for the Dodgers. Right. You've had a few different relievers win it, but generally it goes to the starting pitchers. And now it's something you and I were talking about. Who do you like in the National League, Jeff?
I know there's an article in the paper yesterday by Glenn Sheely taking a knock at Tom Glavine. I personally think Glavine deserves the award. Ty, you want to make a comment on that?
Well, he's sort of fallen off, obviously, at the end of the year. I've always liked Tewksbury the whole year. I thought he was one of the most underrated pitchers for St. Louis. If there was any pitcher that was getting a lot of exposure out of there, of course, it was Lee Smith. And he's been a consistent starter all year long with an excellent ERA. And he just, looking at him every time he pitched against the Braves, just gave them fits. So I really like a pitcher like Tewksbury.
He's got great control. Jeff, I know you like Greg Maddux.
Well, I like Greg Maddux. I mean, here's a pitcher for the Cubs, and any Cub pitcher that can win 19 games playing in that windswept ballpark and have an ERA in the low twos, in my opinion, is doing one heck of a job. The Cubs haven't had a Cy Young Award winner. I don't think have ever had a Cy Young Award winner. But, again, you're talking about a pitcher who's been consistent over the years. I mean, if you go back to the last 4 or 5 years, he's got among the most wins of any starting pitcher in the National League. So, I mean, the guy's a consistent winner, and the funny thing is he doesn't want to go back to Chicago. They've done everything they've had to do to try to re-sign him, and he just doesn't want to go there. So you're going to have a big pitcher on the market this year. But either way, if he wins it or not, he's had a heck of a year up there.
I agree with you. How about Terry Pendleton for MVP?
Well, I tell you, Terry is one heck of a ball player. You know, I mean, that guy, you can see him when he hits a weak ground ball and he knows he's going to be out. He still hustles down the line. Obviously, he's played through injury this year. He's the heart and soul of that ball team. I mean, he's the captain. He goes to the mound. Sid Bream and him go, and they, always help the pitchers out and stuff and try to talk them down and help. He's Bobby Cox on the field, and that's very important for them to have. He's knocked in over 100 runs, which is great. He's hit over 20 homers, and he's still hitting over 300, and he's played a good third base. So, I mean, the guy's done everything that the Braves have asked him.
I wish we could sit him down here for the last week and let him rest.
Yeah, that would be nice.
All right, well, let's move on to the NFL. The Falcons are in Chicago this weekend. Ty, is it too early to talk about missing the playoffs if you lose this ball game?
No, it's not early, but the Falcons have a pretty difficult schedule ahead of them. I think this is more of an important game for the Falcons than it is for Chicago. I think down the road, Chicago's got a lot of games out there that they're going to win. And the Falcons, well, they still have those 2 games against San Francisco. They got another game at New Orleans. And they have some tough games against other AFC Eastern teams. So it's not going to be very easy for them. And they need to avoid injuries. Falcons have just had too many injuries, and they haven't been able to get a consistent running game going simply because all their running backs have been hurt.
Jeff, you're from Chicago. Any comments or the Chicago area?
Well, I can tell you about the thing about the Bears is they have 4 things going for them. That's Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay. They have 4 games left against those teams. There's 4 wins probably. Tampa Bay is much improved this year with Sam White. He's come down there. He's made Vinny Testaverde a believer in his system, and he's made Vinny Testaverde a believer in himself. Vinny definitely has the tools. The guy won the Heisman Trophy. He's just always had trouble locating receivers. He always has a really bad interception to touchdown pass ratio.
Well, there's always the joke that he's colorblind and can't figure out which
well,
jersey he's wearing.
They went with the orange doors this year to help him out there. The Bears seriously are in a situation where they could lose this game and still make the playoffs because the NFC Central is pretty weak. Falcons, on the other hand, if they were to lose this game and drop to 1-4, with, as Ty mentioned, have 2 games left against the 49ers, 1 game left at New Orleans, it's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs after this, even though you've got all kind of wild card teams making it. Last year you had a team in the AFC go at 8-8, and New Orleans made, an NFC team made it 8-8 also. So I was thinking New Orleans 2 years ago. But anyway, it's tough, and Falcons really, this is a game I think, in my opinion, is a must-win game for them.
Okay, we got a phone call. You're on the air, caller.
I'm on the air?
Yes, sir.
Good deal. Good thing we're talking about the Falcons. I'd like to get your guys' opinion on how soon the Falcons are going to get rid of Jerry Glanville so we do actually have an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl and win it.
Well, that brings up something we're going to comment just a minute from here. Glanville and now Andre Rison.
Well, Jerry Glanville has always been seen as a coach to go from having to turning a team around. Jerry Glanville had a great team in Houston for years, never even made it to the AFC Championship game with them. But then again, everybody's saying how great Houston is, but then again, you see, Jack Pardee hasn't been able to get him to the championship game either. So Glanville, a lot of people have been talking about Glanville and how ridiculous he is and how boisterous he is, but all I can say is y'all remember 3 years ago and remember how bad this team really was. And, we were in the playoffs last year. We won a playoff game. So, I mean, people have to remember that just a year ago they were a good team, and I think they still have all the talent there. It's just you have to get it all together. You have to get the guys healthy. As Ty said, have a lot of injury problems and stuff like that.
Well, the first thing that comes into my mind in answering that question is that Rankin Smith has to make a decision. And one of the first things that will come into Rankin Smith's mind when making a decision is cash flow. And as long as Jerry Glanville is able to put people in the seats and sell out football games, he's going to stay. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I just that is the number one issue.
Well, don't you guys think there's a little too much emphasis on finger pointing and name calling and too many peripheral things than going out and executing and winning football games? That's my point. I think, sure, we turned the corner. We're going to the playoffs. That's great. But, the Smiths or the Clampetts think that Lehman Bennett hit a plateau. I think Jerry Glanville is a plateau. we will never get the Super Bowl with him as the head coach.
I would tend to agree with you there. There are too many good ball players seem to get in the doghouse with Jerry, and he won't let them play.
Well, you had all-rookie wide receiver Sean Collins basically disappeared off the face of the map when Glanville got here. Now Andre Rison is the next guy. He held out. And that's something else you have to consider. I mean, Andre Rison's a great wide receiver. If he's not the best in the NFL, NFC, he's second behind Jerry Rice.
Exactly.
But Glanville isn't letting him use play in his position. Now, also, Michael Haynes is hurt. Well, Michael Haynes and Andre Rison are both out there. You're putting a lot more pressure on a defense, and you can stretch it both horizontally and vertically, where Rison's going across the middle and Haynes is going deep. You put a lot more pressure on the defense, and to get both of those players back in would really help the offense, I think.
My main concern is the defense. That's an awfully small defensive line. I've only seen the Falcons play once in person this year, and that was against Buffalo, and I was really surprised that Buffalo didn't score 40 or 50 points. And obviously, the reason they didn't was because they took Jim Kelly out and took a lot of the starters out. This Falcon team, a lot of good football teams offensively can just run the ball right at them and push them out of the way. And this is a problem I've had with Glanville, is having small defensive linemen and a 34 defense, and I just don't see where you can win with that in the NFL.
All right, I think we got another phone call, guys. Caller, you're on the air. Well, never mind. Thanks for the call there. And
let me put a question or say this about the defense. What Glanville's really pushing for is speed, and that's what he wants. And with speed, you have smaller players. Okay. Something else you were saying earlier about as long as Jerry Glanville's selling seats, well, this year he's going to sell seats for one simple reason. You got a brand new stadium, and you got people from all over the Southeast want to come see this place.
Right.
And it's obviously a very beautiful stadium and brand new, and everybody wants to go to the Dome this year and see a Falcons game, hopefully that they would win, obviously. But, this year is not going to be a problem for Glanville. It's going to be if he can somehow get this team turned around and get them aimed towards the playoffs, because really they have a shot. I mean, Joe Montana's still not back with the 49ers. Steve Young has never played an entire season as a starting quarterback. Bono, their backup's a good quarterback, but again, the Niners are the team to look at. I mean, we could have beat the Saints. I mean, we lost on a field goal. We missed a field goal. I mean, it was that close. So Falcons aren't that far away from being a playoff team they were a year ago.
All right. Well, before we move on to college football, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Those are Frankie's at the Prado, Sports Life Fitness Centers, and the Sporting Times newspaper. I think our next topic is going to be college football. And let me put that phone number out once again. It's 873-6713. And Ty, let's talk about the SEC East. We have a surprise team this year.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. Here's Tennessee. They only had 6 starters coming back out of 22 football players, plus they lost key reserves, and here they are. They've knocked off Georgia and Florida in back-to-back weeks in the SEC. Those are impressive victories, and that's the 2 main competitors that they're going to be facing in the eastern side of the conference. And Tennessee's a good football team. Their defense has really impressed me. Larry Marmie, the defensive coordinator, has done a fantastic job with what he's had and having a whole lot of young players. And I don't know if people recognize it, but he took an offensive player, J.J. McCleskey, a receiver, and put him back as a safety against Florida.
Well, they like to do that a lot up there, don't they?
Carl
Pickens comes to mind.
You're right about that. But Tennessee, to me, is definitely in the driver's seat right now, but it's a long season to go, and you just never do know what's going to happen in this conference. I mean, we've seen several surprises already. We saw Ole Miss beat Auburn pretty badly. And then we saw LSU upset Mississippi State. So a lot of things can happen.
Well, Tennessee has to go to Baton Rouge, as a matter of fact, don't they?
That's going to be a good football game, and I think that's going to be on television. I can't wait to see that one. That's a good one.
All right, let's hit a timeout and go to a phone call here. Caller, you're on the air.
This is Michael Harmon.
Go ahead, caller.
I was wondering, what do you think about the Georgia Tech-Clemson game?
All right, Jeff, you want to take a shot at that one?
Well, it's do or die for both schools. Florida State has cruised right into this conference and basically dominated. They've played the 2 perennial toughies in the conference on the road, and they've beaten them. They beat Florida. They beat Clemson, in a good close game, and then they just wiped out North Carolina State. Now you have 2 teams, Clemson, Georgia Tech. You have 2 teams who are very big rivals. I mean, the last few years, this game has really been a big game, and it's been a very important game in the ACC. Clemson won a close game last year, and Tech won 2 years before that. Obviously, the year Tech won the national championship, and they also upset Clemson on homecoming in '89. So this is a big game. Bill Lewis has got a new offense in. Tech is going through a little bit of growing pains with this new offense. William Bell is supposedly supposed to be at least dressed out. They haven't said if he's going to play, but if the guy's wearing his uniform, there's a good chance he's going to play. Basically, in my opinion, if Tech were to, after watching the Georgia-Clemson game a year ago, Georgia was able to stop Clemson's running game and make them throw. But then again, you wonder, did they actually stop them, or did Hatfield just stop running the option against Georgia? But anyway, if you make Clemson throw the football, you're definitely have a good chance to win the game. And as far as Tech goes, Sean Jones is probably the best quarterback in the ACC. I think he'll be first-team all-conference as far as talent level is concerned. And Sean Jones can carry a load. He's got Bobby Rodriguez, he's got Bell, he's got Lincoln. He's got some good players. Tech's main problem right now is they have a new offensive line, and that's, it's going to take some time. Plus, Tech's biggest problem right now is trying to get over a 55-24 defeat to Virginia, and that's got to hurt that team. I mean, it's got to hurt their confidence. But again, it's not hard to get up for Clemson.
No, it's not, and I think that is going to be a good football game. What Georgia Tech, I think, has to be concerned about, first of all, is that they gave up an awful lot of yardage and points to Virginia. Clemson, I can assure you, is going to come out here and try and run the ball right at these guys, and they're going to test them on the ground right up the middle and play smash-mouth football. And I think this game is going to be determined by mistakes and turnovers, plain and simple.
I think a big key is if Tech can get a lead on Clemson, Clemson's not the kind of team that's going to come back. If you make them throw the ball, you're going to beat them. Ty, let's talk about one of your and my favorite topics, the Bulldogs here. They got a big game against Ole Miss tomorrow. What do you think?
That is a big game, but Georgia should handle this game pretty easily. It seems like the only thing that's really been stopping Georgia this year has been Georgia offensively. And what I'd really like to do is take a look at the defensive team, go out there and see the defense play against a good football team, and I think Ole Miss is a good football team. And I'd like to see them play where the offense doesn't give the ball over 6 or 7 times in a game. And I'd like to see how they handle that, and I'd like to see how they're going to handle this option-oriented offense, because in past years, Georgia's really struggled with that.
Well, Ole Miss put up about 45 points on Auburn a couple of weeks ago.
Right, they got some big plays against them, and one of them was defensively, where Auburn was about to go in and score, and here it is. There was a mistake and a turnover down at one end, and Ole Miss turned it into a defensive touchdown at the other. So it's a big play team.
Well, one thing that I've noticed about Georgia is that, they obviously been wanting to go with the passing game. And after watching the game last week against little Cal State, Northern Miami, or whoever they played, it seemed to me that the defense knew what Zaire was going to do. He'd roll out, and the receivers were well covered, and he had to throw a lot of passes into coverage against a very, very average to below average ball club.
Oh, that's a bad club.
Well, okay, I didn't want to come out and say that, but they were.
Just don't give them too much credit.
But the thing is, one thing that stands out is Georgia's running game has been awesome. Preseason, everybody's saying Eric Zaire or Hastings for the Heisman Trophy. What about the tailback? Garrison Hurst has had a great season so far. Okay, granted, he had 150-something yards against Cal State Fullerton, but he had over 150 against Tennessee and scored 3 touchdowns. He had over 150 range against South Carolina. So this guy's had one heck of a season so far. And as long as Georgia, if you can't stop the run, there's no reason to pass, in my opinion. And I know, Ty, you agree with me there.
I agree totally. After watching Vince Dooley for around 20 years, I imagine you don't have any trouble convincing me there.
Well, having to be able to throw the football is very important, and Georgia has the ability to do that. They have Shannon Mitchell, they have Hastings, they have Hassan Graham, who made a great play. Either he catches it for a touchdown or the defensive back catches it for a touchdown this week. But Eric Zaire has got the talent, and he's got the receivers, and the line has done a great job this year, I thought. So I think Georgia has an excellent chance. But let's remember one thing: we defeated Ole Miss. They defeated Ole Miss last year at Ole Miss.
Oxford,
but the 2 years before that, Ole Miss defeated the Dogs. So it's going to be a tough game for them.
All right, guys, we could probably talk about the Dogs until tomorrow morning if we needed to, but I think we've got a phone call. Let's go ahead and get that. Caller, you're on the air.
Oh.
Hello, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wanting to ask the boys, they've been talking about football so much, I wanted to change the subject a little bit and
all right.
get their opinion on what they think about this female goaltender that we got coming in with the Atlanta Knights that they just acquired.
That's a good question.
Well, she stopped 7 out of 9 shots in the exhibition game the other night for Tampa Bay, which is going to be our parent club, the Atlanta Knights, being like a AAA type team in Atlanta. Hey, if she can play goalie, I'll tell you that's the toughest job in hockey is play goalie. I mean, that's where all the pressure is. I mean, you're the final defense. You're like a safety in football. I mean, it's a tough position to play. And if she can stop the puck, doesn't matter if she's male or female. As long as she stops the puck, gets the job done.
Right, I agree. I just wonder how she would fare when you have pile-ups in front of the goal and you have players the character of a Ron Hextall of Philadelphia, who's really a physical goaltender, will go out there and hack people in the back of their legs with a stick and push people out of the way. And a lot of action like that requires a lot of her body strength, and I don't know if she's going to be able to push people around like that. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm just curious if there's going to be a lot of activity around her, how she's going to perform.
Well, Ty, I think they said the other night that somebody had skated into the crease and run over, and she had popped back up and gotten into the goal, and the guy stayed down on the ice, and he hadn't played since then. So maybe she's tougher than we think. I'd like to thank all our callers for calling in, including all the last two that I forgot to thank. I'd like to talk about David Palmer in Alabama, but I don't think we've got enough time. Let's go ahead and get some of you guys' picks in for tomorrow. First up, Falcons and Bears.
Well, I'm going to take the Bears. I think the Bears are going to try and run the football, and I think they're going to be successful, and it's going to be a tight, low-scoring game. But Chicago's my pick.
Well, I think this game could definitely come down to a field goal or a turnover. And, again, Falcons have not had any luck in Soldier Field over the years. I have to go with the Bears also.
All right. How about 49ers at the Saints?
Well, this is a big game.
Good game.
Big game early in the season. You have two teams 2-1. You had the Saints, who won the division a year ago, and the Niners, who had the long streak but failed to make the playoffs at the end of the season. You have the Niners playing among the best football in the league. The only loss they had was to Buffalo, and that was by a few points. I see 49ers winning this game.
I'll go along with that. Although I hate to, I'd like to disagree with you on something here, but I think the 49ers are just scoring way too many points right now. New Orleans, though, has only given up 28 points in 3 games.
All right, now we got Denver and Cincinnati.
Well, I like Denver. No, it's Denver and Cleveland, isn't it?
Well, Denver and Cleveland.
I'm sorry.
I'm sure they play Cincinnati later. We'll pick it then.
Sometime. Denver always beats Cleveland. I mean, they've played some huge games in the past. Usually, they played a couple AFC Championship games against each other. The drive was in Cleveland, orchestrated by John Elway. Mm-hmm. Cleveland just doesn't have much. They were able to defeat the Raiders last week, which was really a surprise in my opinion. But they had Todd Marinovich playing his first game. I like Denver in this game.
Denver lost 30-0 last week to Philadelphia, and I think they're really smarting from that, and they want to come back and show something. I'll go with Denver.
All right, how about the Vikings? They're at Cincinnati this week.
Well, you've got Dennis Green and you've got David Shula, 2 new coaches. They're both 2-1. The Vikings' 2 wins are against the Bays, as I go back to my Bay theory. I'm going to pick Cincinnati at home.
Well, I'm going to take Minnesota.
All right.
Minnesota has they had such a strong preseason. And I know that preseason doesn't mean a lot sometimes to people, but anytime you take a club and go into Washington and beat them the way they did in preseason, and Washington did play their starter some, and they beat them pretty handily, so they do have some talent on the team.
All right, Ty, they're giving us the wrap-up sign, but before we go off, we're going to pick a couple. How about Tech, Clemson?
Clemson.
And how about the Dogs and Ole Miss?
Georgia.
Both of you going with Georgia?
Both of us.
I hope you're both right. One of you guys can wear this helmet home. I'd like to encourage you guys to tune in next week. Melissa Ponzio is going to be back to host the show, and her legs are a lot better than mine, so I think you'll enjoy that more. And I guess that's it for now. Thanks for tuning into the Press Box.